I'm canning tomatoes today. A lot of people shy away from canning because they think it's so difficult. But tomatoes are actually very easy to can, and I just wanted to show you how easy and quick they are. First thing you do, you want to make sure your canning jars are very clean. So I washed these in hot soapy water and rinsed them out with hot water 3 or 4 times to make sure there's no soap left in them. And then I turn them upside down on a clean white towel to drain. The other thing that's very important is when you can, you always need to use new canning lids. Sometimes they don't seal all the way if you use older ones, so the good habit to do is to use brand new ones each time you can. Okay, next, this is my steaming pot. This is the pot I put the tomatoes in so that the peels come off very easily. I keep it, all the time I can, I keep it at a very low simmer so that it's ready for the tomatoes. So I'm just going to drop them in, and I usually put 14 to 16 in at a time. And let the boiling water heat all of them up a little bit. Now after that, I'm going to turn on the cold water and fill up a bowl with cold water. And I let the water keep running because the tomatoes will have a tendency to heat the water up. So if you keep running cold water, it keeps it cold. Now I'm going to put the tomatoes in the cold water. And that cold water, after you have them hot, loosens the skins on the tomatoes. See, you can already see how easy the skins come off. And you want to make sure you get all the skins off the tomatoes. And then I just put them in the colander to drain. Okay, first you just cut the center out of it, the stem, where the stem was. And if there's any white in it, you get as much as that out. Or if it's not quite ripe, sometimes you'll get tomatoes where they're not quite ripe in here. You want to make sure you cut all that out. If there's any blemishes on the tomato, like here, see how easy that skin comes off? If there's any blemishes, you want to make sure you cut all of that out. Because if you leave something in, a bad spot in the tomato, and you can it, it will ruin the whole jar. So you get any spots out of it. Okay, I'm ready to fill the first jar. So I'm going to take one of these jars that I've washed, and all I'm going to do is cut the tomatoes that I've peeled and fill the jar. Okay, now I've got the jar pretty full with tomatoes, so I'm going to take my little wooden, you can use any kind of a mallet or whatever you have, and I'm going to press that down. That pushes the tomatoes down, but it also makes juice. Now, you want to make sure you don't add any extra water in these because these tomatoes are always juicy. Now that I've got it pressed down, I'm going to fill it up again. And I got it full again, so I'm going to press it down again. You can see the juice, how the juice, it makes the juice when you press the tomatoes. Whoop. See how the juice wants to run over? They're just full of juice. So now when you get them filled up, you make sure you take a towel and wipe around the rim. And I'm going to set this one aside until I fill the rest. My hot water can holds 7 of the quarts. So I'm going to fill the 7 quarts and then we'll go from there. Okay, I've filled 5 jars now, so I've got 2 left. And I'm not quite sure if I'm going to have enough tomatoes for the last 2. But if not, we'll just put 6 in the hot water bath. little bit more in this one. Make sure they're filled up. You want to make sure the juice covers all of it. All the tomatoes. So we have one left here. Let's see if we have enough to fill this one up. Might just have enough. Looks like we're actually going to have one extra one, so I'll just throw that in some soup or something. Now, if you have a lot of them left over, you can refrigerate them for your next batch, or if you're making several batches in one day, you can use it for the next one. Okay, I think I've got all these wiped clean so they seal correctly. Now, the only thing I'm going to put in these is a teaspoon of salt in each one. Okay, and then I'm going to put the new lids on them. And then I'm going to put the rings on them, and I don't put them on real tight, just tight enough to hold the lids on until after I take them out of the hot water bath. That way, if they would get too hot, they won't, the lid will come off rather than breaking. But I've never had a problem with them, so just kind of screw the lids on each one. Okay, now I'm ready to move over and put them in the hot water bath. Okay, now here's my hot water bath, and while I've been canning the jars, I've had it kind of simmering. And you don't want it to boil too hard because they, for two things. If you put a cold jar into hot boiling water, they have a tendency to crack maybe. But also a real boiling water, hot water, will make some of the juices evaporate out of the jar. And the canning kettle has a rack in it, which you need a rack so the water can go underneath. And I'm just going to set these jars in this water. And after you get all the jars in there, you want the water about halfway up the jars. So it only takes about a little water in the bottom, maybe up to the edge of the rack. Now you see I have all my jars in here, and the rack's in there under it. And so I'm just going to put the lid on. The water is just barely boiling, and that's the way you want to keep it the whole time. And I'm leaving them in there for 45 minutes. And then we'll take them out, and I will show you how nice they are. It's been 45 minutes, and I'm going to take these out. Now, you may want to take one out at a time if you're short, or because they're very heavy, is what I'm saying. So, but I just lift them up with the rack, and I move them over to my board. Now you want to take each jar and make sure the lid is on tight. And that'll make the lid seal. You screw the rings around, and you'll hear them start popping. And that's a sign that they're sealing. And with the tomatoes, as all canned goods, if you go to open it up and that lid underneath, after you take the ring off, and the lid underneath needs to be really tight, so when you get a knife or a can opener or something to pop it open, you'll hear it pop, because that is because it's been sealed tightly. And if it is not on there tight, then the product inside has not been sealed correctly, so it won't be good to eat. And a lot of people will take these rings off after they cool and just store their canned goods with the lid on it, but I don't do that. I feel safer if I leave the ring on tightly to make sure those lids stay on tight.